Well, welcome back to another one of our subscriber Q&A sessions. My apologies for being absent so long. I actually quite enjoyed doing these videos, and obviously by your feedback, this was something that you guys have enjoyed seeing as well. And so while we are each other's captive audience here during the shelter in place from the virus, let's go ahead and I'll do a few more of these videos this coming week to kind of keep us both entertained, and hopefully that will get me re-engaged into doing these videos on a more regular basis. And so with that, this video comes to us by virtue of the Blackshears, who asked what on the surface of it was a very simple question, this one here. Well, as I started to look into it, I came to realize that it wasn't so simple. Now, full disclosure here, I actually haven't been following the battery technology to a great degree lately. Now, the reason for that is that nothing that I've seen on the horizon from any other company comes even close to what Tesla had shown us with this million-mile battery research. And in fact, that spurred an entire series of these videos a couple of months back. And so until I heard any murmurings that there was anything even close, it really just wasn't worth my while to do any meaningful research into what other people were coming up with. And this video is actually going to be a very telling reason why that is, and we'll get to that later on. But to start us off, in the tradition of some of our longer videos, I'm going to go ahead and give the conclusion to this video right up front. So that will make it so that those who want to complain that, well, we spend 15-20 minutes talking about something that could have been related in a minute or a minute and a half. And so let's go ahead and do that then. So did Samsung pull an Edison with their new solid-state battery? Yeah, they did. So when I started to do research into Samsung's solid-state battery, what I discovered is that it's just a press release. They haven't actually released any hard data whatsoever about their solid-state battery. It's simply a press release that relates to their anode technology. And the reason they did that, and by the way, the anode that they came up with may be clever. It's they've combined silver and carbon in creating a new way to make an anode for the battery. So when you start to read their press release, everything is anode, 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 anode. And what they'll tell you is that they've come up with a way to inhibit the formation of dendrites. But what they don't actually tell you is anything related to the cathode side of the battery or anything relating to the solid state portion of their battery. And that's where the dendrites form in the first place. All they'll say is some very cryptic nonsense that the anode promotes the growth of dendrites. Well, of course it does, because that's part of the flow, the ionic flow within the battery, from the cathode to the anode. So that really didn't make any sense to me. And so then I started to look into it more and more, and I realized, oh, now I know what they're doing. What they're doing is they're promoting the fact that through this new anode manufacturing process, that they have now sidestepped Tesla's patents that they have acquired through Maxwell for making their anode through what's called their dry electrode manufacturing process. And so what that allows them to do is it allows Samsung to then be able to manufacture batteries by claiming that they have changed the technology enough so that then it is a separate and patentable product. And that's it in a nutshell. How did I do? Did I do that in a minute and a half? And so that's basically the conclusion to the entire thing is that Samsung has given you no information whatsoever about their new solid-state battery. They've simply said, we have altered the anode, and now we're going to go ahead and start to research and manufacture their own version of a solid-state battery. So for those of you that are interested in hearing a bit more about my reasoning, go ahead and pause the video here and grab your favorite beverage, and let's go ahead and untangle this a little bit. It is going to involve looking at quite a bit of legal speak that that Samsung has released in their press releases, and so that'll be interesting. And so go ahead and grab yourselves a tasty beverage, and we'll get into this. Well, thanks for staying with us. So to start us off, let me explain what I mean by pulling an Edison. No, I am not trying to bag on Edison. No, I am not trying to bag on Samsung. In fact, Tesla themselves, in a way, pulled a bit of an Edison by purchasing Maxwell Technologies to get them out from underneath the thumb of Panasonic. You'll remember that that's actually what even started off this entire series of videos in this format, where we started to talk about and counter a lot of the FUD that was being promoted as far as Tesla's relationship with Panasonic. And it just got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, and so then I had to go ahead and toss my my hat into the ring and give my 2 cents worth. So to explain just really quickly what I mean by that, Thomas Edison, he started off his career as a telegraph operator, doing that for 16 to 18 hours a day. I'm sure he got to a point where he just heard that in his sleep. Well, he also got to the point where he could just translate it just like somebody would be talking to him in Morse code. And so when he discovered that he was not actually going to be able to make a career out of being a telegraph operator, he then went to the next level and actually decided, oh, well, if I'm going to really make it, I'm going to have to start making these. And so he took his expertise and then went and created a new method of telegraphy where he was actually able to multiplex his signal, and he was actually the creator of phased multiplexing. He was able to run 4 telegraphs on a single wire, 2 ways. So that was his kind of claim there, and that allowed him then to sidestep all of or most of the patents on the telegraph at the time, and he started making his own. He repeated this with the telephone. Bell had invented the telephone, but you couldn't really hear very well, and so then what he did was he patented a carbon microphone that made the sound so that you could actually hear what the other person was saying. And then again, that was enough of a change to the technology that the technology would not be viable if it were not for this innovation. So that, in a nutshell, is what I mean by pulling an Edison. It is not a bad thing. Many companies have made a business model out of doing that exact same thing, so don't think I'm trying to bag on Samsung for that. But I am actually going to bag on Samsung. And the reason is a legitimate one, and that is that in researching this question, we'll pull it really quick up here, the question posed was simply what I thought of the Samsung's new solid-state battery. Well, I have no idea what I think about it, because after I researched it, I know less about it than I did even before I started. Everything that I found is just related to one press release that Samsung has put out in regards to the battery, where they make a couple of claims, but these claims are really interesting. We'll go through them in detail. It'll also give you kind of an idea on when I see something, how I read it, and so then that'll maybe be interesting to see. I don't know. So this is the first part of their useless press release, where they talk about how they have doubled the energy density in the battery. Okay, that's very exciting to read. And then they talk about up to a 500-mile range. Okay, well, the last time I checked, that the Tesla Model S, the long range plus version now, could go 390 miles on a charge. And so even if we're kind and we'll say, okay, we'll make it 340 because, let's go ahead and make it completely real world. That's 640 miles. That's longer than 500. So now you start to realize that there really isn't any usable information in this press release. Why? Well, we've doubled the capacity, but we've achieved 500 miles compared to what? They haven't given us any efficiency numbers. They haven't said, okay, a car that will, consume X number of watt hours per mile. They haven't given any meaningful information. Then they include in there, we'll bring it up again, 1,000 charge cycles. All right, well, Tesla's already doing 1,200 charge cycles or so. That's not new. So now what are we looking at with what I feel is a solid state battery? Again, one that inhibits dendrites, one that is actually something that one would think of if one were to think of a solid state battery. Well, we're looking at Tesla's million-mile battery. This is what prompted all of that, all of those videos that we did 3 months ago or so. And that is that in Jeff Dahn's paper, he released the test data, the hard test data, that their battery did 4,000 cycles, 4 times what this Samsung battery will do. All right? That's inhibiting dendrites, not 1,000. That's not news. And doubling it compared to what? Doubling it compared to Samsung's batteries. It certainly doesn't appear that they've doubled Tesla's capabilities. Okay, so now let's go ahead and pull up the next one, because the next one gets worse. And so here it is. And you can see where they start up where they left off in the previous one, where they're talking about how they conquered the anode, that the anode was what started the dendrite growth. Well, of course it did, because that's how the battery operates. Okay, so then they start off with, well, this is how we conquered the growth of the dendrites. And then they say absolutely nothing. So let me go ahead and color code this for you to give you an idea on what it looks like when I read it. So now let's start by taking a closer look at this. Again, we'll start with the areas that I've highlighted there in green. Now these are innocuous. They're just general statements that I found were interesting. They weren't attempting to be misleading in any way. And so again, they're talking about the composition of the anode. That was very interesting. A silver carbon composite, and again, that's the anode. So that was an important thing, and that it's a prototype pouch cell, and so that was interesting to me. And that they're not. This isn't something that they've wound in any kind of a finalized form. They're still doing mostly lab testing on this. That's great. So then they start talking about a larger capacity. That's great, and again they mention the anode, and so that's really kind of the sum total of the portions of that were just general information to me. Okay, good. Well, now we start to look at those yellow areas. Okay, that obviously it was proposed, because this is not anything that's finalized. Okay, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. Enhanced in its overall safety. Now that's an interesting one. Now Samsung has a pretty heavy motivation for trying to produce a solid state battery. Now again, one of the huge benefits of a solid state battery is you can bang this thing around, you can drive a nail through it, you can cut portions of it off, and it's not going to get into a situation where the positive and negative sides of the battery will be exposed. Now, again, I made light of that whole thing there, showing that one of the Samsung Note 7s erupting there. But what happened there was that a manufacturing flaw in their batteries bent over the little fins on the anode side of the on the anode side of the battery, and they wound up touching each other, shorting out between plate to plate, layer to layer on the battery, and that caused a severe overheat and discharge situation. Terrible for Samsung. That was more of a manufacturing oops than a design oops on the battery, really, if we're fair. But if you have a solid state battery, that kind of thing doesn't happen. Can't happen as often or for the same reasons. Let's say that, or for everyday reasons, real life reasons, especially when you're talking about a car that's going to get possibly in an accident or something shoved through the bottom of the battery pack, things of that nature. So obviously, they're going to be concerned with that safety angle. And then back up to this here. Obviously it's promising research, that's great. And then the back of it is travel up to 800 kilometers, 500 miles or so, on a single charge. And they mention that as though it's something it's amazing. Well, no, it's not really amazing. I mean, you really haven't told us anything about it. We don't know how big the battery is that you're talking about there. Okay, well, now it gets really bad. Now we start looking at those aspects as I'm reading this that I can come to no other conclusion except that they're being outwardly deceptive on this whole thing. So let's go ahead and unpack those. So a longer cycle life. Compared to what? You said it was 1,000 charge-discharge cycles. That's nothing new. That's not telling me you've inhibited the dendrites. Tesla's already announcing that they're going to have a battery that'll do in excess of 4,000. 4,000 was just the biggest benchmark that Jeff Dunn could come up with in his testing. He then admitted, well, that was actually less than 10%, and so we really don't know. We're thinking that realistically you're looking at somewhere between 6,000 and 9,000 cycles, because they just really don't have any data past what they showed us about a year ago now in regards to their million-mile battery. When they do Battery Investment Day, I have no idea what the hell they're going to wind up announcing, but I'm betting you it's going to be pretty amazing. And so then again, back up here. So then it says that they've increased the energy density up to 900 watt hours per liter. Now, that's more than double. Where do they get that 900 watt hours per liter number? That was one of the things that I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. Where have I seen numbers that large? Oh yeah, Jeff Dunn's paper. And so in Jeff Dunn's paper, we'll go ahead and zoom in here where they're talking about the stack density. Now, I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on this, to be honest here. I think I know what the stack density is, and that's basically a theoretical maximum that's based on the stacks that you have in your anode in that particular test cell. And so I believe that's what that number refers to. Again, I open it up to anybody that knows more about that than I do. But that stack number seems to me like what they're using, because if you double the number that Tesla has in their million-mile battery, it doesn't come anywhere near to what they're claiming as is double from their battery. And so then that tells me that that's probably the result of them doubling their stack density from their previous battery, and then they resulted in 900, which is basically the equivalent as far as it's the amount of energy that it will carry to Tesla's million-mile battery, which makes sense, because now when you start to dovetail those numbers, you start to realize, oh, okay, well, if the Tesla battery will go what we've discussed, where you're into that kind of a 300 mile, 400 mile range on the battery. The new million mile battery may be a little bit more than that. But remember, we talked about the differences between the current lithium-ion batteries, where you have the cylindrical cells, and a solid-state battery, which could be packed more densely because they have different thermal properties, completely different thermal properties. And so then when you're comparing that, then for Tesla, right, comparing Tesla battery to Tesla battery now, the difference between the fact that you lose a little bit of density overall, comparing the two different types of cells, you lose a little bit of energy density in the medium, but you more than make up for that because now you don't have as much airspace in between the cylindrical cells if you're going to pack them more tightly. Now, what Samsung is saying here makes more sense if you start to then equate it to that they have then managed to then double their existing battery output to now equal what you see in a battery pack that will be available from Tesla. So it's unfortunate again that they don't go into greater detail, and so then so they're going to make their prototype approximately 50% smaller by volume than a conventional lithium-ion battery. Well, okay, we had also discussed that when we were talking about how in the hell are you going to get 200 kilowatt hours in the Roadster, right? When the Model S, when we looked at the distance between the wheels and how much space they had for a battery pack. The Model S has a 100 kilowatt hour battery. So how are you going to get 200 kilowatt hours in there? So that is the indication that I have here that Samsung actually does have a solid state battery, but they just don't give us any kind of information on it whatsoever. And again, the last bit there, we already discussed about they're making a big deal that it has 1,000 charge-discharge cycles. That doesn't mean anything. That's what Tesla's doing now. And so we'll go ahead and wrap this up there. Really, that's my reasonings on what I said about why Samsung has done this press release. It's got more to do with the fact that they have a bit of a PR problem because of the fires that they had in the past, and the way that they have to solve that is to then say, oh, well, we're making a solid state battery, and so therefore there won't be any more fires. So great, that's fine. But as you can see in these releases, when you compare it with the information that Tesla has already released on their million-mile batteries, they haven't really given us any useful information. They're not telling us what the capacity of the battery is. They're not telling us in comparison to what vehicles, by letting us know how many watt hours per mile they're basing their efficiency numbers on, how far the vehicle will go on a charge, and they're comparing it to vehicles that we already know are not only on the horizon from Tesla, but that are already pretty much in manufacture. I believe that in Battery Investment Day they'll probably announce that they'll announce a release date probably for the Roadster, and they'll also probably announce a release date for the Tesla Semi. They have a tendency to do that where they'll package more than one release in. But again, I haven't been talking about this because I've been waiting for Battery Investment Day. I thought, okay, well, we'll go ahead and cover some other subjects in the meantime, and then once they actually do release what they release on Battery Investment Day, then we'll be able to kind of take a closer look at that. And so for that prediction, I probably should have uncovered the crystal ball. And so, but that's what our prediction is going to be, that during Tesla's Investment Day, they're going to go ahead and let us know that they have already been integrating their next generation, even better than what they announced from their million-mile battery, that they'll probably let us know that they've already been putting that into some of their products, and they'll probably give us some release dates for some of these associated products like the Roadster and the Semi. So hope you found this all fun and enjoyable and entertaining while you're all stuck at home like we are. And I want everybody to please be safe. Please be mindful of the elderly and those who have underlying health concerns, and try and stay at home where you can. Limit your contact with others. And please, everybody, stay safe. And we'll see you soon.